Hello there. Tonight we walk quietly through Pompeii after dark. The street is warm from ovens that have finished their boasting. Lamps hang from doorways and pour small golden circles onto the black stones. Smoke thins into the air like a thought that has already decided to leave. You can smell bread that has turned into memory, olive oil that keeps its promises, and dust that learned manners at sunset. Footsteps soften. Voices lower themselves without being asked. We are looking for a curtain, not a door. A lamp that knows how to glow without staring. A stool where someone sits and keeps the peace of the street. The curtain breathes when we arrive. The doorkeeper lifts it with 2 fingers, the way a page is turned when a reader already trusts the story. A bowl of water waits. A jug tips. Warmth runs across the knuckles and gathers in the palm before it falls. A towel receives it all and gives the hands back a little of the afternoon sun. No questions, just the simple grammar of care wash, dry, enter. Inside, red and black walls are divided by thin lines of gold, as if the house liked to draw its own borders softly. Lamps are trimmed with a bent nail. Wicks become shorter, flames steadier, shadows calmer. Coins rest in a shallow dish. A wax tablet remembers only what an honest knight needs to remember. This is a brothel, yes, but it is not a stage. The house works the way good houses do, by routine, by courtesy, by the patience of objects. Oil warms in a small cup and learns the scent of leaves. Linen waits in neat stacks that will not stay neat for long. Mirrors lean at kind angles so they can glow without seeing too much. A ribbon lies folded, pretending to be obedient. A lyre rests on a chair and holds its tongue. When privacy begins, the curtain answers first. It rises a little, then falls. It finds the floor and teaches the floor to be quiet. The lamp moves closer, then lower. A whisper decides to become a murmur, and then decides that is far enough. We keep names to ourselves. We keep distances that are kind. We notice the work of hands, the small tug of a braid becoming looser, the way linen forgets the courage of its creases, oil becoming warmth between careful palms, 2 shadows leaning in until they look like a single, slower shape. A laugh that shortens into breath and stays there, grateful. A mirror turned toward the wall so it can be present without being involved. Nothing is hurried. Nothing is counted out loud. The ledger writes in quiet shapes, 1 for a lamp, 1 for water, 1 simply to say that people were gentle with each other, and the night remained whole. We will move through the rooms as if they were paragraphs. Street to threshold. Lamps to baths, oils to mirrors, music to sleep. The doorkeeper's nod is the first sentence. The last sentence is a lamp turned down with 2 fingers and a towel hung to dry in the place it prefers. Between them are coins that hardly make a sound, sandals set aside without tangling, a curtain knot that loosens when asked a certain way, bread broken into neat halves, salt pinched with exact kindness. Where words would make the air too bright, fabric speaks instead, a rustle that means yes, a pause that means stay, a sigh that means enough for now. When the house keeps a secret, it does so like a friend. It looks elsewhere with love. If you drift off, the house will go on with its work. Lamps will be fed by the width of a finger. Towels will forget they were wet. The lyre will remember the shape of a song without playing it. Somewhere behind a curtain, breath will find breath and slow by agreement. Somewhere near the threshold, a stylus will hesitate and then decide there is nothing new to write. The night will sort itself into chapters you do not have to read to the end. So let the stones keep their cool. Let the lamp hold its small, responsible fire. Let the curtain learn your rhythm, and you learn it. We will begin at the door that is not a door. We will enter the house that knows how to keep both welcome and sleep. And if you close your eyes before the first room is finished, that is all right. The night is long, and the house is gentle, and we will be careful with both. Pompeii keeps its nights the way tidy people keep drawers. Everything has a place, and even the shadows mind their manners. Ovens in the bakeries have finished their proud talk, and now exhale in small, satisfied breaths. The air holds a warm loaf's ghost, along with a sharper memory of olive and ash. Basalt paving stones keep cool where the day never touched them, and stay warm where carts paused too long. So your feet learn a quilt of temperatures as you walk. Lamps hang from brackets over low doorways, and pour round coins of gold onto the stones. The coins of light do not buy haste, they buy quiet. Graffiti-scratched ships, names, rude drawings that have lost their power in the dusk sleep on the walls, the way old jokes sleep at a table after the wine is gone. At the mouth of our street a fig leaf has fallen and decided to be important for an hour, and nothing here will argue with it. We take the Vicolo that knows how to keep a secret without looking as if it does. It is narrow because narrow is practical when rain insists. It is straight where water needs to be clever, and curves where carts need to remember to behave. The gutter holds a little sky and tilts each lamp circle into an obedient ellipse. A dog pads past with the professional air of one who has inspected many evenings and found them acceptable. It glances at us and chooses to be uninterested. Somewhere up the lane a door closes, in the careful way doors close when people live close together. A woman leans from an upper window, just enough to shake a cloth and fold it again. The cloth, like a bird that has considered flying, changes its mind and remains domestic. The night smells not of danger, but of arrangements that have been made and kept. We are looking for a particular sign, and it is not a painted sign. It is the way a curtain hangs where a door might choose to bang. It is the character of a flame that prefers to glow rather than show. It is a stool placed at a degree to the street that lets a person sit on the threshold of two worlds without being dragged by either. We look for these three, and we find them at once. The lamp here leans toward its work as if it had been asked kindly. The curtain hangs with a small weight in the hem, so it falls decisively, not as if it were forever deciding. The stool is simple wood, but the grain on the seat has learned the geography of a familiar posture. We have found the door that is not a door, and the person who minds it. The doorkeeper is not a guard so much as a translator. They know how to turn street language into house language without making anyone feel corrected. They see feet first, how ankles carry the day's story, and then hands, and then the face when the lamp agrees to show it. A nod appears, not the quick nod that says, "Go on," but the measured one that says, "We have room for you, and you have room for us, and both facts can remain true." The curtain breathes once the way a reader lifts a page and waits to see if the next sentence deserves to be read now. We do not hurry it. We wait for the fabric to complete its thought. When it does, the opening is as wide as a word spoken correctly. Water is the first courtesy, and courtesies are the house's native tongue. A bronze bowl lives on a low stand, half filled with warmth borrowed from the lamp on the shelf above. The jug beside it shows the polished ear of its handle as if it were listening for the right palm. The doorkeeper tips the jug and gives us as much water as hands rightly require, and not a drop more. The stream runs along the knuckles and pools in the cup of the palm before it answers gravity with a series of patient ticks in the bowl. A folded towel receives the water and gives back a little roof sun it remembers from earlier. We pat, not scrub. We dry thumb pads, not knuckles alone. The towel goes to the side where used towels go to forget their work without shame. Already we have begun to speak the house's grammar. clean before close, quiet before quick. A shallow dish near the bowl holds coins grouped in tidy families. Copper sits at ease. Bronze stacks itself into little soldiers that do not mistake themselves for parade. Silver, which does not appear every night, lies with that feline certainty certain metals have when they know their reputation arrives before they do. A wax tablet lies beside the dish, its surface a calm pond with ripples where lines were smoothed and drawn again by a hand that knows the pressure a stylus wants. The doorkeeper does not write names. The house is kinder than lists. The marks are small and sufficient. A straight stroke for a lamp lifted later. A dot for a jug carried from the cool shelf to the nearer table. A neat hook where a curtain ought to be tied to communicate privacy with hearing rather than privacy with silence. A seal, lion-faced and face down, holds a curl of papyrus that enjoys misbehaving. The seal weighs as much as a plum and is twice as patient. Rules are not spoken. They are embedded the way good joinery is embedded in a table. You learn them by the behavior of things. Lamps speak oil time rather than sun time, a finger's depth for a short talk, 2 fingers for companionship, 3 fingers for a decision the house prefers not to make. Curtains speak with the height of their knot, high for corridor, mid for voices that can pass, but must not linger, low for a room that has folded itself into quiet and will be offended by footsteps with hard heels. The bell is a cord coiled where a hand can find it while pretending to find the curtain's hem. It does not clang. It insists softly as if reminding a simmering pot that water still obeys rules. Even disagreement here has manners. In the kitchen a pot is kept that can be made to clatter like an accident. The noise has ended several problems before they were born, and the pot is proud of this without needing to be thanked. Step inside the first arm's length of the hall and feel how distance changes its mind. Outside, the world is measured in street and roof, and the places where roofs fail. In here it is measured in lamp circles, and the reach of a hand to a towel folded toward the person who will need it. Red walls keep their color like wine that will not be hurried. Black panels hold shadows in a way that flatters them. Between the 2 runs a gold line disciplined, enough to be straight, but not proud enough to be rigid. On the plaster, a crack that might have been a complaint at noon is now a river you can cross with a fingertip. Someone has rubbed that place often. The floor shows a place where water stood, and then thought better of it. A couch sits turned at an angle chosen by someone who knows where a person will wish to look when they do not wish to look at the lamp. Cushions are rolled, not piled, because rolled things agree with the hour. On the low table, a bronze mirror leans at a kind angle so it can be present and not intrusive. A comb keeps its teeth up to avoid threatening hair. A cloth is folded once, then again, with the fold placed toward the hand that will reach for it. We understand that the house admires labor done without speech. The night has already begun to collect people, and it collects them with generosity rather than appetite. A fisherman passes the curtain with the careful knees of someone who has spent a day arguing with a boat and making peace with it. The smell of salt is tamed with oil near the bowl, and the towel helps the hands forget rope. A shopkeeper admits chalk on the sleeve and receives the small attention a brush gives when it asks chalk to behave. A traveler carries dust that has opinions. Water corrects it without scolding. You know the house understands people because the house does not require them to become different people before entering. Voices drop because furniture requests it, not because a sign commands it. Laughter occurs and immediately turns into something that thinks about other people trying to sleep. The doorkeeper trims a lamp with a bent nail kept for that purpose. The dead bit of wick departs as calmly as a leaf is persuaded to leave a path. It is set aside on a shard of pottery to be forgotten at the speed a day deserves. The flame steadies and grows lower by the width of a bean. Shadows decide to agree. Another lamp takes life from this one, not because matches are rare, but because knights learn better from continuity than from convenience. Carried through the corridor, the new flame shows furniture to itself. The jug near the wall becomes a copper moon. The ribbon on the peg considers its future and decides to behave. The mirror keeps its lean toward kindness. We can hear oil and wick making their small treaty. Objects tell the truth more politely than speeches. On a shelf, a line of unguentaria slender glass bottles catch the lamp's glow and return it in patient syllables. Oil inside, one wakes up when the bottle is touched and sees if the hand that touches is warm enough to confide in. It is. A careful palm learns to be a small stove. A second bottle is empty and clean, not scrubbed to death, but washed in the correct temperature, as if the glass were a friend who must be invited to stay. A ribbon folded upon itself remembers that it will forget itself later. Linen grown sober in the afternoon sun lies stacked in sizes. The topmost sheet is folded so that one corner can be taken with the ease that honors both haste and care. Somewhere in the next room the lyre is turned so it rests on 3 legs rather than 2. A lazy string asks to be tuned and is told later by a firm fingertip that cannot be offended. The street speaks in polite rumors beyond the curtain. A cart has misjudged a rut and corrected its opinion. 2 boys have decided that whispering jokes is a better arrangement than shouting them. A dog chooses a new favorite stone. None of this disturbs the hall. Even the moth that considers the lamp is persuaded to keep its powder by a hand that knows how to move without noise. The house has learned the rare art of letting the outside exist without owning it. Inside is not a fortress. It is a conversation carried at a better volume. Coins move, and you would miss the sound if you had not been taught to listen for it. A copper agrees with the dish. A bronze makes a tiny sound of future arithmetic. The stylus hovers and chooses not to write. The doorkeeper's decision not to record becomes itself a recorded decision. A second towel replaces the first, and the stack closes over the gap without revealing that anything has changed. Bread is cut on a wooden board with a knife that loves straight lines. The slice falls with the weight of fairness. Salt, which is not ordinary here even when it is common, is pinched rather than poured. Pinching commends attention to grain, and grain has earned attention. A cup of watered wine appears for someone who needs to tell a long day that it may go now. The wine is not boastful. It understands its place in a night that already knows how to be kind. Privacy begins not with doors but with decisions. A knot that held a curtain high is persuaded to consider a lower station and agrees. The fabric moves in a breath, and then learns stillness, as if it has been given a better job. Linen forgets the courage of its creases and becomes domestic again. Oil warms in palms that have learned how much to promise and how much to keep. A laugh loses its edges and melts into breath. 2 shadows, separate at first, lean into a single, slower silhouette. The wall does not complain about being asked to host that union for a while. The mirror is turned a finger's width more toward the wall, not to deny beauty, but to keep it from becoming audience. The lamp draws near and decides to see less rather than more. The house approves. Outside the curtain, the wax tablet receives nothing at all that needs marking, and emptiness turns into the most accurate record of the moment. The threshold, which is the lesson of the house in miniature, continues to teach even while it forgets to be proud of teaching. It teaches that touch can be a language when words would wake a neighbor. It teaches that the weight of a towel, well wrung and well folded, is an argument for the goodness of small work. It teaches that a person who watches the angle of a curtain could run a city, and no one would notice until the city went on running long after pride would have worn out. It teaches that correct shelves and correct knots are the furniture of safety, and that safety makes warmth possible, and that warmth invites sleep. When privacy becomes the correct conclusion and not a request, we take our eyes away with gratitude rather than disappointment. The house does not need witnesses. The house needs people who know when to admire the wick, the comb, the line of gold between colors, the honest shape of a coin. We admire. We let the lamp have the important part of the job. Oil and wick will keep company with breath and fabric for as long as is right, and then everyone involved will decide to be ordinary again. Linen will relayer in its corners. The mirror will be turned back toward the room and remember how to glow for everybody. The knot will come apart with a sound the room understands as a period. The doorkeeper sees to the hall the way one person sees to a garden after the party has sat down to talk. A cushion's tired corner is turned to its fresh face. The jug that has been faithful is sent back to the cool shelf, and its cool twin praised into service. The stylus is set at a friendly angle across the tablet so that it looks ready without looking hungry. The seal is lifted from its curl of papyrus, the lion allowed to stare at the ceiling and be dignified. A crumb is brushed into a small plate that knows it is a beach. The lamp is convinced to lower itself a little, and the shade of blue in its flame becomes the blue that tells moths to find other work. Time is measured now not in watches or drips, but in things finishing and putting themselves away. A breath that had been two becomes one, and then becomes a sigh, and then becomes sleep. The curtain that had learned stillness lifts, the width of a finger to consider being a window again, and decides that will be tomorrow's job. The towel that was used hangs where it can forget in a way that dries. The house expert in warm departures waits for coins to make the almost sound they make when they move with consent rather than with haste. The wax tablet receives a small curve mark that means nothing broke and the night is proceeding. We return once more to the street so that the story can respect both sides of the curtain. The Vicolo has not changed because good streets do not change for one person's mood. A cart has passed and left ordinary news behind. A cat has reconsidered a choice and taken the roof road instead. The fig leaf has given up being important and become a fig leaf again. The lamps go on conducting their small orchestras of circles and ellipses. We breathe and find that the air has learned our rhythm the way the curtain learned it earlier. It is a night that likes to be agreed with. We will go back in a moment, because the next chapter waits with a basin and ewer and a correct towel that would like to be helpful. But for this hour the job was to find the door that is not a door, to meet the person who keeps the peace of the threshold, to accept the language of water and lamp and coin and cloth, and to witness how privacy begins when a house decides to look at its own work. When you are ready, we will step from the street's idea of silence into the house's idea of quiet, and we will learn how baths and oils teach the body to believe what the mind has already learned here. That rest happens when things are done correctly, and then allowed to stop. The threshold is where the street learns to lower its voice. It begins with a nod that means welcome and also means remember yourself. The doorkeeper lifts the curtain with 2 fingers, the way a careful reader turns a page, and the flame in the lamp approves by leaning a little and then settling. A bowl of water waits on a low stand at jug tips. Warmth runs across the knuckles and pools in the cup of the palm. The towel receives it and gives back a hint of noon, the smell of sun-baked linen, a memory of roofs. No speeches. Wash, dry, enter. The red of the walls keeps its wine-dark promise. The black panels hold the night without swallowing it. A thin gold line draws a courteous peace between them. You feel your shoulders learn the room's slower arithmetic. Breath in, breath out. Lamp steady, voices soft. The table near the stool is a small map of the evening. A shallow dish keeps coins in patient families proper comfortable. Bronze disciplined, the occasional silver lying with feline self-possession. Beside it, a wax tablet smoothed and written until the surface looks like dusk. The stylus rests across it, like a bridge, one end bright for making, the other flat for unmaking. The doorkeeper writes in marks that memory likes. A straight stroke for a lamp trimmed later, a dot for a jug brought nearer, a small curve that means the curtain is to be tied to the middle knot. Privacy with hearing, not privacy with silence. A seal lives face down on a curl of papyrus, its lion hidden out of courtesy, its weight honest. When the stylus moves, it does so in a music too small to be music, just the sound of wax consenting. The book of the night is kept without names and without suspicion. It remembers what the evening needs in order to be kind. Rules are furniture here, not lectures. Lamps speak oil time, not sun time. A finger's depth is for a short talk. 2 fingers for company. 3 fingers is indulgence the house rarely grants, and when it does, other arrangements move quietly to make room. Curtains speak in the grammar of knots and height. Tied high, quarter only. Tied to the middle. Conversation may pass, but it may not sit down. Tied low. A room has folded itself into quiet, and footsteps will be offended by hard heels. There is a chord that could be called a bell, if it ever needed to prove itself. It lives where a hand could find it while pretending only to adjust the hem. A pot in the kitchen has learned how to clatter like an accident, when an accident is the politest way to end a mood. A back door opens to a lane that minds its own business. The lane exists more as reassurance than escape. Safety here does not perform. It arranges. The first lamp of the inner rooms is trimmed with a bent nail that has done nothing else for years. The black tail of wick is pinched off without drama and cools on a pottery shard. The flame steadies and grows lower by the width of a beam. A second lamp takes fire from the first continuity preferred over convenience and rides the corridor on a saucer, throwing soft geometry ahead of it. The jug near the shelf becomes a copper moon. The ribbon on the peg decides to behave. The mirror leans at a kinder angle, present but not inquisitive. A couch sits at that exact slant a human spine admires. Cushions are rolled, not thrown, because rolled things agree with the hour. On the table, a cloth has been folded once, and then again, the folded edge placed toward the hand that will reach for it. Furniture, light, and air rehearse how to be useful without asking to be noticed. Water returns in the shape of courtesy rather than scrubbing. A second towel waits on the stack, its edge turned back so a hand may take it without persuading the whole pile. Fingers are dried in a rhythm that calms the jaw and teaches the neck to stop auditioning for trouble thumb across the pads. Each nail remembered, wrists approved. A crumb of bread is cut so cleanly the slice seems to have agreed to be a slice. A pinch of salt sits beside it the way a bright star chooses a moon. Wine is watered to the right mood, no heroics, a kindness for a throat that has been useful. The air trades the day's sharpness for warmth. Oil makes a room into a small country that welcomes passports of every accent, provided the holder can lower their voice. Here the ritual is not a preface. It is the story. People arrive, and the doorkeeper translates them into the house's language without anyone feeling corrected. A fisherman's knees confess rope and salt. Oil helps them forget both. Chalk on a shopkeeper's sleeve lifts away under a cloth that has practiced such lifting until it looks like a greeting. A traveler's dust has opinions. Water disagrees gently and wins. Coin moves to dish with hardly a sound. The stylus hovers and decides not to write perfect record for certain moments. Laughter visits and removes its shoes. Even the moth that considers the lamp is discouraged with a hand whose movement is a lullaby. The street outside continues with its own business wheel. Through a rut, a door closed politely, a dog deciding it has checked enough corners, and the house listens the way a good friend listens to a world they don't need to fix. Unguentaria slender-necked bottles catch a lamp's small galaxy in their glass. Oil inside tests the temperature of a palm and finds a home. Fragrance wakes. Something of leaf, something of rind, something pressed under a stone on a hillside and carried down in patience. A ribbon waits to be less obedient. A comb rests teeth up so hair will not feel threatened. Linen grown sober in afternoon sun lies in stacks that will not stay neat. A mirror waits, leaned toward the wall, able to glow without seeing. Music has a seat and decides not to be needed. These are the objects that know how evenings progress. They do not hurry because they already know what is coming. Privacy, when it begins, does not announce itself. It changes the room's pulse. A knot is asked a quiet question and decides to loosen. The curtain breathes once and learns to be still. Linen remembers a shoulder and forgets the courage of its creases. Fabric speaks where words would make the air too bright. Oil warms between careful palms. Warmth becomes suggestion. Suggestion becomes a sentence the lamp understands. Voices tilt inward. Laughter places itself lower, closer, content to be a murmur. Two shadows lean until they resemble one slower shape. The wall hosts this union without becoming a witness. The mirror looks elsewhere with love. The lamp chooses to glow and not to watch. Outside the curtain, the doorkeeper trims the hall flame a fraction thinner blue, quieter work, and writes nothing at all, which is the correct entry for a moment that does not belong in a ledger. Time folds differently in rooms that keep secrets kindly. What would be a list becomes a paragraph. What would be a paragraph becomes a breath. A ribbon lets go without complaint. A comb is set down with the tooth point away, as if to say enough for now. The lamp listens to the soft mathematics of breath finding breath and decides to be steady. Somewhere in the kitchen, a pot sighs when it is lifted from heat. Somewhere in the corridor, a jug is set down as if it had learned polite landing from birds. The house edits the night into chapters whose titles do not need to be spoken. Water, oil, linen, quiet. When the lamp is ready to be higher again, it rises by the width of a bean and pretends it always meant to. Coins rest in their dish without new companions. The curtain lifts a finger's width and decides even that is too much. The threshold continues its lessons even as it forgets to claim credit. It teaches that touch can be a language when words would wake a neighbor. It teaches that the weight of a well-wrung towel is an argument for the goodness of small work. It teaches that the person who minds a curtain can run a city if a city is defined as a place where people are kept safe without being told why. It teaches that correct shelves and correct knots are the furniture of safety. Safety makes warmth possible. Warmth invites sleep. The doorkeeper practices these politics with a nail for trimming wicks and a stack of linens that never scolds. A back glance measures shadows and concludes they pose no threat. A forward glance includes you and concludes you have learned the house's grammar. Red returns, salt returns. Water returns changed by having been useful. The seal is turned lion up at last, allowed to stare at the ceiling and be dignified. The stylus rests at an angle that suggests readiness without hunger. A crumb is persuaded to become part of a small, tidy geography on a plate meant to receive it. A cushion, tired on one corner, is rotated to show its better face to whoever may need it next. Mundane heroics, this is what the threshold believes in. It is how knights succeed without fanfare. One lamp lowered, another lifted. A jug humbled to a cooler shelf. A mirror forgiven for what mirrors sometimes do. The room, having been trustworthy for an hour, becomes more trustworthy. We step back toward the curtain, not to leave, but to appreciate the boarder's craft. The street beyond has gone on without us, which is how good streets behave. A cart announced a late loaf and then apologized by not rattling where it could have rattled. A cat chose the roof road and found it acceptable. The fig leaf that wanted to be important gave up and became a leaf again. The Vicolo breathes, the house breathes, you breathe. Inside, the towel that served hangs where it can forget in a way that dries. Linen relearns its corners. The curtain, having kept counsel, is pleased with itself without vanity. The wax tablet receives a small curve that means nothing broke, and the night is proceeding. What remains of the chapter is a promise to the next. The threshold has taught you to be slower than street speed and quicker than indifference. It has taught your hands to understand water and your voice to understand room size. It has introduced you to the lamp as the correct clock for such hours. It has shown you how privacy can be practiced without becoming a performance. From here, baths and oils make their case. A basin will be ready, and a ewer will remember your grip. Fragrance will learn the warmth of a wrist. Steam will make the air gentler. Mirrors will keep company without demanding attention. The body will be taught what the mind has already begun to practice. Rest is made, not fallen into. If you close your eyes before we reach the basin, the house will continue with its work. The lamp will not mind. The night will hold your place. And when you wake, the curtain will still know how to breathe and how to be still. The room for washing is not grand, and that is why it works. Heat lives here in correct portions. A small brazier banked to the color of pomegranates. A copper ewer set near enough to learn warmth. A shallow basin whose rim remembers many hands and the easy weight of water. Steam draws its faint commas against the plaster and then becomes sentence again. The air smells of olive and clean metal, of damp linen that will soon forget it was damp. Light is lower than in the hall and kinder to every edge. A towel hangs with its corner turned toward the person who needs it. Another rests folded and unassuming on a wooden stool. The rest keep quiet on a shelf, square upon square, as patient as bread. The house does not make a speech here. It places the objects in their positions and trusts the night to read them. Water begins as a sound. The ewer tilts. A thread of warmth becomes a ribbon, and then a small river that knows when to stop. Hands are first because hands remember the day too clearly, and the day is not invited. Fingers learn the weight of the stream, wrists cool, and then enjoy the thought of heat. Palms become honest again. The towel receives and gives back the noon it kept in its fibers. A face is washed with the care one gives a flower one does not wish to own. Forehead, temples, the soft plain, beneath the eyes, each touch a brief, correct visit. The back of the neck is approved by water. Shoulders forget their quarrel with gravity. Feet go last, because feet carry everything and deserve the feeling of finishing. The basin keeps the sound of each rinse like a bowl keeps fruit, nothing hurried, nothing wasted. The juice of the moment saved by the shape that was made to hold it. Warmth returns when heat is needed, and withdraws when it has said enough. The brazier gives a correction to the water, a breath more than it had, so that steam lifts but does not insist. You can read the room by the way the steam behaves. When it rises and flattens, there is company. When it curls and keeps its shape, the room is private. Tonight it curls kindly, as if aware of its own good manners. A linen cloth is dipped and wrung with a twist that respects the fibers. The cloth becomes an instrument. Laid across the nape, it teaches the spine to be a greater friend to itself. Laid across forearms, it asks the body not to prepare for ropes or bundles or the stubborn arithmetic of jars. Laid across the chest and removed, it carries away the unkindness of the day and leaves warmth that continues to act after the cloth is gone. Oil is introduced with ceremony small enough to be more honest than ceremony. There are bottles, each with a narrow throat, and a memory for sunlight unguentaria, who once watched a hillside and now watch a flame. The doorkeeper does not select. Someone whose work his hands selects. They lift a bottle by its belly and let the lamp place a star in the glass. The stopper comes loose with the sound of something that has always meant yes. A spoon of clay warms in the brazier's neighborhood. The oil sits in it and learns your temperature the way language learns your accent. Fragrance decides to be present, but not to brag. A leaf crushed on a stone, a rind pressed and persuaded. A resin from a tree that waited all afternoon for this moment, and is not impatient now that it has arrived. The oil glows as if it were remembering its former life and forgiving it. The hand that works the oil is not a stranger to patience. It waits just above the wrist as a question, then lands as an answer. Circles begin small as coins, then larger, then smaller again, polite arithmetic that teaches muscle what time it is. The forearm becomes a road rediscovered after a flood, the silt of effort smoothed, the ruts of worry filled, the surface asking nothing but to be followed without argument. The elbow, that quiet hinge, is invited to admit that it has been helpful enough, and it agrees. Oil travels, but it does not wander. It goes where consent leads it and nowhere else. Up across the shoulder where rope and day and habit had negotiated an unwise treaty. Down to the hand that signs and lifts and steadies. Back to the wrist where pulse keeps its own countryside of beats. The lamp decides to be more present without brightening. Shadows lean closer, the better to listen without offering advice. There is a way to bring the back into this work that does not make a spectacle of it. A folded cloth is placed exactly so beneath the shoulder blade. A palm with oil becomes a warm sentence along the long muscles that have spoken too loudly to chairs and baskets and doors. Each stroke slows as if it had found what it was looking for. When the breath below the hand lengthens, the hand answers by leaving a little shine behind, the visual memory of a kindness finished correctly. Neck last, always last, not because it is important, but because important things should learn to wait. The thumb finds the quiet places at the base of the skull where thoughts try to become orders. It persuades them back into thoughts. The head nods once in gratitude and then decides not to keep track. The tools of scraping the bronze strigil athletes swear by live here, but do not press themselves into service tonight. This is not a night for the cut of a blade against oil and sweat, not a stadium night, not a bathhouse argument with sand. Instead, a linen wipe does the taking away in soft paragraphs. Oil collects what it came for and gives back what it meant to give back: sheen without grease, warmth without fever, fragrance without noise. The cloth is turned as if pages were being turned, and each new page is clean, because the person turning them knows which stories tire the mind and which let it rest. Sensuality arrives in the room the way a guest arrives who knows the household very well. It takes the chair it always takes. It speaks lower than it could. It remembers birthdays and does not embarrass anyone with a song. Linen forgets the sharp pride of its folds and learns to drape, to listen, to respond without becoming a lesson. A ribbon gives up resisting and becomes an ornament on the table rather than a reminder of order. The mirror is leaned farther toward the wall so that it can glow without seeing. Reflection is kept to a reasonable size. Breath meets breath and decides to become a single slow garden path. Oil keeps working where it was asked to work. Heat keeps working where it was even slightly required. There is a sound in the throat that does not need to be repeated. It is set on the shelf where the lamp will keep it safe without telling anyone it exists. The conversation between water and oil concludes with gratitude rather than with the need to be right. A final rinse holds the temperature that makes words unnecessary. Droplets write short epigraphs down the spine and vanish. A towel, fresh from the stack, abbreviates the wet without trying to erase it. You can feel the exact moment when skin chooses to be skin and not armor. The person with the bottle places the stopper back with a familiarity that would be rudeness in any other context and tender here. The bottle returns to its place. A second bottle, lighter and sharper, the citrus, the rind stays unopened for later, for the moment when wrists will be introduced to the air before a walk through a cooler room. The brazier gives a last agreeable sigh. The basin owns a small geography of moonlit water. The ewer settles with a sound that believes in being useful again. We are not dressed yet. We are not arranged yet. That is for the next hour when braids, mirrors, and the quiet grammar of threads take their turn. For now there is only the goodness that comes from correct order. Water, then warmth, then oil, then the acceptance of being kept by both. There's the pleasure of cords not biting, of knots being persuaded instead of commanded, of a palm's sure knowledge that pressure and permission are the same measurement taken in different rooms. The house keeps the ledger open and writes almost nothing. A single curve by a single stroke, lamp trimmed, water used, all well. The curtain breathes once, as if it had been consulted and found nothing to object to. The lamp chooses to look at the wall. Outside, the street has its own rituals, bakery boys with flour on eyelashes. A cart whose wheel has learned the careful way to misbehave so as not to wake babies. Someone laughing at a memory you will never know, and none of them are required here. And here the night arranges itself into quarters. Steam, cloth, oil, quiet. Your hands are citizens again. Your shoulders are made of the right material. Your neck votes for sleep. We will cross to the next room soon and let hair be persuaded into peace. Let perfume declare itself in friendly single words. Let the mirror agree to be company and not judge. But before we go, stand still and admire how the basin has forgotten the day, how the towel is content to hang without telling anyone what it did, how the yo is neither proud nor shy, how the lamp has mastered the difficult art of brightening a place while refusing to look. If your eyes close here, the room will complete the sequence without you. It knows where the cloth goes to dry with dignity. It knows which bottle should be turned a finger's width so the light will not bully it. It knows how to quiet a coal for later. It knows how to teach skin to remember a better story in the morning. If you remain awake, we will step into the next chapter together, carrying the warmth we earned and the quiet we were given. The braids are waiting. The mirror has already been kind. The ribbon is prepared to be tamed and then to misbehave in exactly the way that looks like grace. The room for dressing keeps its own weather warmer near the lamp, cooler where the wall remembers late shade. Everything that will be needed has already taken its place. Combs with teeth set wide and fine, pins that have learned not to argue, ribbons folded into obedience they do not intend to keep, a bronze mirror leaned at a kind angle so it can glow without becoming a judge. A low chest stands open like a quiet mouth linen within, then finer linen, then those small courtesies that help a person meet a knight. A bead string that's modest and bright at once. A bracelet that prefers to sing only when the hand is moving. The air smells of clean cloth and patient oil. The lamp writes slow amber on edges, so nothing startles and nothing hides. It is the hour when the body is invited to forget the day and become a good place to live. Hair goes first, not because it is most important, but because it teaches the mind to step down from its small podium. The comb begins in friendly paths, crown to nape, temple to ear, behind the ear where worries tug their knots. A breath of oil touches the comb's teeth. Shine appears as a rumor, and then keeps its promise. Strands agree by degrees, surrendering their stubbornness the way rope relaxes once it learns it will not be needed for pulling. The braid begins 3 lanes of hair crossing and returning, a quiet arithmetic the hands learned long ago, left over middle, right over middle, again and again, until what was separate learns to be single without losing itself. When the plait reaches the hollow where the neck begins, a ribbon is invited into the work. It slides along like a thought that knows exactly what it means, and therefore never needs to raise its voice. The knot at the end is firm enough to keep an oath and kind enough to forgive if someone forgets and pulls too quickly. The mirror keeps to a respectful angle, catching lamp and braid, but not the entire face enough to confirm what hands know, not so much as to create a stage. A pen meets the plate and disappears, leaving only the knowledge that it has done its job. Another follows, and another short sentences that do not require reply. The second braid joins the first, so the room can be calmed by a pair. Stray hairs are invited forward to be admired and then persuaded back. The pen is turned until it learns the angle that makes it a promise rather than a threat. A palm pauses at the nape, almost work, almost rest, and the breath beneath it agrees to lengthen. There is a small, involuntary sound, soft and uncomplicated, the kind that never asks to be repeated, and even if someone tried, could not be. Cosmetics here take the lamp's tone, gentle, never eager. A trace of kohl darkens the lash line and teaches the eyes to speak more softly. The mirror leans closer, not to inspect, but to keep company. A hint of red, the kind that looks like sun, remembered. Not sun demanded, visits the cheekbones and promises to leave before pride arrives. A light powder quiets the unhelpful shine, so light can lie on the brow without argument. None of this is armor. It is invitation, the way a tidy room invites sleep. The stylus on the nearby table hears a laugh and decides there is still nothing useful to write. Perfume is layered like a conversation with someone already trusted. The bottle is taken by the belly, so its glass can remember sunlight without boasting. The stopper lifts with the sound of something that has always meant yes. A tiny spoon warms between 2 fingers and receives a measure that would be called a drop if the night were more impatient. Wrists are addressed first, where pulse keeps its honest arithmetic, then the hollow at the throat, where breath will pass and carry the message gently. Then a thought of scent behind the ear for anyone allowed near enough to deserve it. A lighter note follows leaf, rind, a small bright word that knows when to stop, brushed along the collar, where linen will pass, and on the braid ends so movement can be pleasant even when the room is quiet. The air changes by 1 degree, as if the night itself had leaned closer to listen. Clothing answers the invitation with its own manners. Linen that learned the afternoon light agrees to be gentler now. Corners are lifted, draped, smoothed with the back of a hand the way a line is smoothed from a poem you want to say without waking anyone. A clasped bronze dressed as gold finds its partner and decides to behave like a hinge rather than an ornament. A strap chooses the angle that will not complain later. The hem consults the ankle, and the ankle forgives the hem. If color is allowed, it is the kind that sleeps well. Faint saffron, old rose, the green of leaves at dusk. The body becomes itself without declaring itself. The lamp agrees by showing more gold and fewer edges. Jewelry is poured like water, only enough and into the right vessel. The bead string that sang earlier is muted by cloth and will sing again when a laugh lifts it. A bracelet tries the wrist, then the arm, then returns to the wrist with the relief of someone who has found home. An earring decides to remain on the tray. The knight will not miss it. A ring rolls once in a small circle and is caught by a fingertip that has learned not to chase. The ring understands grace and comes to rest where it can admire without boasting. Every metal makes a private promise. To glint when movement needs applause, to behave when silence wants the room, to belong to fabric and breath. Signals, the house's gentle alphabets, are reviewed without naming them. The curtain tie sits at the middle notch. Privacy with hearing, not privacy with silence. The coverlet near the couch is lifted a finger's width, which means the room is being used and does not want surprises. The nearest lamp is lowered just enough to announce that looking is not on the agenda. Bread is cut into halves rather than quarters. The cool jug waits with its handle turned toward the hand that will return first. If anything needs stopping, a pot in the kitchen is prepared to stumble loudly. The doorkeeper knows how to set it right again with a smile. Safety is so present it has become background, like a steady drum beneath a song, and because it is present, nobody needs to sing about it. Closeness returns, but now it speaks the vocabulary of cloth. Fabric slides and remembers a shoulder, then remembers that memory can be private. The braid grazes the nape and feels like a sentence that ends with a promise. A palm finds a sleeve linen to linen and remains there long enough to be understood. Breath notices breath and decides to slow for both at once. A laugh almost happens and then becomes something warmer that wears a laugh's shape without the sound. The mirror looks toward the wall because it knows that warmth and reflection do not always belong to the same minute. The lamp chooses to glow and not to watch. Dressing concludes the way a good story does not with a trick, but with a feeling that the correct rooms have been visited. Braids keep their oaths. Ribbons are asked if they will behave later, and behave like dignitaries who accept invitations only from hosts they trust. The mirror steps back into its role as a companion rather than a witness. Perfume writes a last small note and puts the stylus away. The chest is closed, not slammed. The stool turns slightly toward the lamp that enjoys making angles look deliberate. A hand smooths the coverlet, not to erase anything, but to make the room suitable for the next paragraph of night. In the corridor, a second lamp is lit from the first continuity, preferred over convenience, so that whatever comes next will inherit steadiness rather than noise. If the night will include music, the lyre offers only the note that proves it is tuned. The rest is imagination and the soft percussion of breath. If it will include talk, it begins with small excellences, the ribbon that found the perfect path, the clasp that refuses to pinch, the oil that agreed to be present, but not proud. If it will include silence, it is the satisfied kind, like heat taken off at the right moment, so nothing boils over. You could step out now and let the house introduce the rest of itself. Courtesies, rules, coins that hardly speak. The quiet room where boundaries are furniture and privacy is practiced without becoming a performance. Or you could remain here a moment longer. Feeling here teach the neck to be happy. Metal teach the wrist to rest. Cloth and skin conspiring to make comfort plausible. Either way, the lamp knows how to keep time without waking anyone, and the curtain knows how to breathe and then be still. The room where the cup lives is not far from the threshold, and that is intentional. It is a parlor of small decisions where night chooses its manners and then keeps them. The table is low and square, burnished by elbows that learned not to press. and the lamp above it has been convinced to shine like a promise rather than an argument. On the tabletop, a tray holds the instruments that allow a house to be kind without becoming foolish. A clay cup that prefers to be watered rather than proud, a jug that remembers cool, a pinch bowl of salt, a plate with two neat halves of bread, and the quiet crumbs that attend such fairness. Beside these, the shallow coin dish, the wax tablet, the stylus laid across it, like a bridge between things proposed and things agreed. This is where the evening puts on its good language. A cup is the first rule you can drink. Wine here does not swagger. It is taught to behave by water in a ratio everyone in the house understands without reciting. The doorkeeper pours the water first, because thirst belongs to the body and wine belongs to the hour. Then a measure of wine that brightens the cup without making it loud. Then a patient stir that persuades both to cooperate. The cup is presented with two hands, not because ceremony is required, but because steadiness is contagious. Whoever takes it is asked only to sip, and in that sip the room learns what kind of night it will be. Talk that leans forward, talk that leans back, or that third kind of talk that makes words optional. When the cup returns to the tray with its rim damp but not generous, the doorkeeper reads the ring it leaves the way sailors read when on a pool, enough to set the next sail, not enough to predict the sea. Bread follows the cup because hands like something to do that is not fidgeting. The loaf is honest and cut cleanly, so no piece has to apologize for its shape. Salt is pinched with the accuracy of a priest who has seen real hunger and real plenty and refuses to make either a spectacle. The person who eats first remembers to tilt the plate so crumbs fall where crumbs are wanted, and the person who eats second remembers to pretend they would be happy if offered the smaller piece. The house watches these gestures with the good humor of a host who has seen better and worse and decides to mark neither, only to encourage what will help the night behave. If laughter comes, it chooses to stay nearer the mouth and the throat and to end quickly, like a curtsy rather than a bow. Coins speak next, but only enough to tell the truth. Copper is domestic and lays its backs comfortably against each other. Bronze stands straighter and asks to be counted in little columns. Silver, when it appears, pretends to be asleep. The dish is shallow to prevent any coin from practicing deceit. The doorkeeper does not tip the dish toward themselves. They rotate it so the person who brought the coins can see each metal accept its fate. A single finger moves a piece from one tidy family to another. No scraping, no clink allowed to become a sentence. The wax tablet opens its dust-colored face. The stylus touches down lightly. A vertical stroke for lamp and room. A dot for water and bread. A soft curve that means privacy at middle knot, hearing aloud. No names, no histories, because the house keeps the kind of memory that forgives. Rules exist here the way good beams exist in ceilings. Invisible until you lean, and then indispensable. The curtain has 3 stations on its tying cord, and each is a language. High knot, corridor traffic, voices allowed to pass like weather. Middle knot, a room is in use and prefers to hear without being obliged to answer. Low knot, the room is folded into quiet, and footsteps should wear soft shoes. Lamps have their own grammar. Higher means conversation may ask for detail. Lower means the air will be thick with whispering, and the lamp will not volunteer to witness. There is also the bell that is not a bell, a cord hidden where a hand can find it without appearing to. When it is used, it does not summon drama. It summons the kitchen pot that knows how to clatter convincingly, which is often the quickest path to manners. Consent here never turns into a speech because speeches are tiring. Instead, the house trains objects to speak in its place. A cup with its rim down on the tray means talk is finished for now. A cup turned sideways means talk would like to become listening. A cup kept in the hand means listening would like to allow touch. The doorkeeper glances at cups and does not need to glance twice. Linen placed across the lap, folded once toward the knee, means privacy is welcome. Linen smoothed flat means the person would like to remain a citizen of the room a while longer. The mirror is turned a fraction toward the wall when a person wishes not to perform. The mirror is turned back when they wish to admire craft, not faces. Signals make the air fluent without asking people to translate themselves out loud. Sometimes a newcomer arrives needing the rules taught softly. The doorkeeper's voice has the gift of instructing without finding the student. Water first, they say, and the jug tilts. Bread, please, and the knife makes fairness a habit. The middle knot suits you, and the curtain finds its breath. Lower the lamp by a bean, and the flame approves of its smaller job. A hand hovers over the coin dish and is guided by example rather than correction. When touch is requested, it is requested with the vocabulary the house provides. A palm offered like a question. A shoulder answering by offering its happiest angle. A ribbon allowed to be untied by the person who tied it, or by no one at all. Where words would turn coarse, fabric continues the conversation. Rustle meaning yes, pause meaning stay, a sigh meaning enough for now. The wax tablet receives a mark that looks like a smile learned to write. The ledger's numbers are few and always smaller than anyone expects. This is not a counting house. It records only what the night requires to be fair to the morning. If a cup has been filled twice, a second neat stroke is added near the first, the way a friend places their chair beside yours instead of across from it. If a lamp has followed someone into a room, a dot learns the lamp's name and agrees to forget it in daylight. If a curtain has been moved from middle to low, a curve becomes a deeper curve, and when it rises again, the curve rises too. When the stylus is lifted, the tablet looks as though dusk had been persuaded into order, and then allowed to be dusk again. Politeness is not a costume here, it is a climate. When voices overlap, they overlap the way waves do one rises, because another has agreed to fall. When hands meet, they meet as if returning borrowed books, gratitude first, and the knowledge that the library will be open tomorrow. Even refusal has manners. Another cup? Asks the doorkeeper, and someone answers by turning their empty one rim down. The refusal is so graceful it feels like a gift. Lower the lamp, and a palm hovers briefly over the flame before withdrawing. The lamp has learned to understand absence as well as instruction. The house keeps these gestures in its walls the way trees keep rings and grows stronger for them. Safety is always part of the conversation, but it wears the clothes of convenience. The back door to the lane likes to pretend it is only for the cool air. It is also for leaving without explanation if leaving is the kindest sentence. The kitchen pot that clatters knows how to interrupt what needs interrupting, and the woman who sets it straight again can be everywhere in one motion. A wedge that looks like ornament lives under the couch leg. If a chair begins to skitter, the wedge discourages it from believing in drama. The doorkeeper's stool is placed so that a knee can find the shelf without looking, and feel whether an edge has been nudged. None of this is paranoid. It is simply the sort of housekeeping that treats everyone like someone worth keeping safe. There is a part of the night when the cup becomes a clock. Sips grow longer apart. Rims learn to be dry. Watered wine remembers it began as water. Conversation becomes fewer nouns and more verbs of being here, now, this, enough. Secrets are not invited, but if they arrive, they are offered a short chair and told kindly that bedtime is soon. Perfume that had been a bright word becomes a memory. Oil that had been work becomes a quiet that does not need to be named. The house does not applaud. It lowers a lamp, adds a dot to the tablet, turns a mirror a fraction toward the wall, and rearranges the crumbs into a small geography that will be easy to sweep. The central part of courtesy rarely announces itself. It appears as closeness that knows when to be careful. A sleeve touches sleeve and becomes hand touching hand, without either feeling surprised. Linen slides and then becomes still, as if it remembered a story too good to tell out loud. A braid, checked earlier, grazes the nape with the kind of accident that happens 3 times the same way. Breath finds breath and chooses to slow in a way that asks nothing and offers warmth. The curtain at middle knot forgets it knows the lower knot and decides not to learn it tonight. The mirror continues to glow at the wall. The lamp makes itself smaller, showing that smallness can be generous. When the ledger is asked what to write, it writes nothing and calls it accuracy. Eventually, the cup must decide to be empty, and it does so without drama. The last swallow is partial, a courtesy to the idea of thirst rather than to thirst itself. The doorkeeper takes the cup with the competence of a person who has never spilled a secret and does not intend to start. Bread has become crumbs, and then not even that. Salt is pinched one last time so that nothing in the night has to end without flavor. The coin dish holds its small republics in order. The wax tablet shows dusk, captured and organized and then forgiven. A cloth passes over the table, not to erase the evidence, but to give it a softer ending. What the rules have done is simple and large at once. They have made room for softness without danger, for nearness without taking, for warmth without demand. They have kept the night from learning bad habits. They have taught hands the difference between work and comfort, and taught the mouth the difference between silence and being quiet. They have allowed everyone who will sleep here or near here or within earshot of this house's patience to decide in the morning that they were treated correctly. The doorkeeper sits back a thumb's width and allows their spine to feel like a spine again. The lamp decides to be a little bluer. The curtain practices stillness and becomes excellent at it. We rise from the cup and the ledger as from a conversation that was worth having and is now content to end. The rules will remain even when the room is empty. They do not need company to prove they are real. The house has more to show, a small stage where dice and music behave like tame animals. A quiet room where boundaries are furniture and sleep is allowed to begin while people are still speaking kindly. A corridor that knows how to be a harbor between those two. If your eyes close before we get there, the ledger will be satisfied. The last mark it needs to make is already in the shape of your breath. If you remain awake, we will take the lamp and let it be our clock, and we will walk toward the places where conversation becomes rest without anyone having to announce it. The small room that holds music is not really a room. It is a suggestion made by furniture and lamp light. A low platform, no higher than a hand's breadth, turns one corner into a stage the size of a generous rug. A chair and a backless stool make the audience whether or not anyone sits. The lamp that hangs above has learned to shine like a confidant. On the wall, a band of red carries a thin parade of ivy, not to be looked at, but to keep company with those who look elsewhere. Dice live in a shallow bowl, whose rim is smooth from being tapped by players who do not trust luck unless luck is reminded to be polite. A knucklebone sits on the table the way a cat sits, apparently indifferent, perfectly placed to become important. A small hand drum leans against the platform. A flute lies beside it, with the careless confidence of something that has always been good at entering a room. The air is warmer here by a degree, because this is where breath becomes sound and sound becomes permission to be softer than the street will allow. Music begins like a lamp being turned up, no announcement, only the sense that the room has remembered itself. A thumb strokes the lyre's string, not to demand a tune, but to see what the air's willing to hold tonight. The first notes are argument and reply, one bright line that rises, another that bows to meet it, the two deciding to be kind. The flute accepts the pitch the way a guest accepts bread, with gratitude and a promise not to make trouble. What they play has a shape the house recognizes, part boat on a safe harbor, part lullaby for someone who swore they were not tired, part road that leads nowhere new in the most satisfying way. People talk over it because the music was built to be talked over, and the music is pleased. It wanted to encourage conversation, not replace it. The lyre rests on its knee as if it had been born there. The drum asks nothing, then asks a little, then becomes a heartbeat under the lamp, until everyone in the room breathes nearer the same line. Dice follow naturally, because rhythm invites rhythm. The bowl is set in the center of the low table, and the bones are rattled with the competence of hands that have learned to play without teaching their wrists to brag. Knuckle bones have the good manners to be unglamorous. Ivory that has forgotten it was bone, corners eased, faces clean, numbers implied rather than shouted. A throw is made, and the bowl says a soft, civilized clatter. The doorkeeper dislikes noisy luck, and the bowl has learned to agree. Fingers hover to count, but do not touch until the owner has nodded. Rule and courtesy are a pair here and take the floor together. A modest cheer spills into a laugh and declines to become a vote. Someone loses on purpose to make a story end at the right paragraph. Someone wins by forgetting what they wanted and then being given it anyway. Coins are not invited to this table. The prize is smaller and better. The right to request a song, or to pass the cone, or to be asked a question that takes a whole minute to answer. Conversation in this room is a woven thing. Threads begin. How far was the journey? What did the road smell like? Which wall in this house keeps the best coolness? Who taught your hand to hold the bottle that way, and then are allowed to lie across each other until they look like a cloth nobody planned, and exactly the cloth that was wanted. A story about a neighbor's stubborn fig tree puts out leaves in the second retelling. A proverb about lamps being better judges than people makes a round and returns with a new smile attached. Names are left out unless the person named is present and flattering. News shrinks to fit the hour. Advice is smuggled in as laughter and accepted as if it were wine. Whispered questions take their time. What knot do you use to make a curtain obey without teaching it to sulk? Which oil forgives the quickest hands? How do you know when to stop tuning and begin playing? And the answers are the kind that need to be shown later or not at all. Where the room could tip into gossip, the flute proposes a different key, and the rumor bows to musicianship, deciding it prefers to remain a rumor. The small stage is not only for instruments. Dice can be theater. A player whose luck has been practicing its modesty takes the platform and tosses from that height, so that the bones learn a curve that makes them prettier and not more obedient. Someone teaches a game from another town, and the table makes room for new rules without making anybody apologize. A pair of hands demonstrates a trick for calling a number without speaking it. The way you breathe, the way you tilt the bowl, the way you look at the lamp just before you let go. Another pair of hands demonstrates the trick for not being fooled by the first trick. Do not look at the lamp. The bowl grows wise and the bones delighted by their own capacity to be well behaved. A knucklebone is placed on the back of a hand, tossed, and caught again. The audience, such as it is, practices the art of admiration that does not include clapping. The room rehearses being pleased for one another, which is harder to learn than dice would suggest and more valuable than the number of pips. Closeness in this corner is a social instrument, tuned by attention rather than hunger. A sleeve finds a sleeve and becomes a hand finding a hand. The two remain hands, not declarations. Breath leans toward breath and becomes a lower version of talk. It stays talk because talk has not yet finished its useful work. Shoulders angle the way chairs taught them to toward without taking. Linen discovers a shoulder and remembers it for exactly the right length of time. A ribbon that pretended obedience in the dressing room permits itself 1 degree of mischief and then returns to order without the need for witness. A knot asked a quiet question earlier and now answers with a smaller, tighter promise. The lamp chooses to glow and not to watch. The mirror on the far wall is leaned too deliberately to see. It glows at the plaster and approves of everything that cannot be seen. The house encouraged Nurnus the way a good host encouraged music enough for warmth, never enough to wake the neighbors. There is a moment in every night when talk forgets the world and remembers the person sitting opposite. It arrives lightly, a question about a scar that is not a scar, a memory of a scent that many people remember without having the same day behind it, the shared knowledge that hands can be tired in a way even sleep cannot cure. The liar waits for the sentence to end, and then places a cord under it like a cushion. The dice wait and do not grow bored, because even bones understand the courtesy of a pause. The doorkeeper, not watching and yet somehow knowing, lowers the hall lamp by the width of a beam so that the small stage becomes the only island of brightness, and therefore the safest. The thread of the talk tightens, then loosens, then becomes a braid that is contented to end where both voices agree to stop. This is what the house wishes for when it trims the first wick at dusk, a conversation that learns to be quiet without dying. Games travel through the room like weather-short showers of chance, a long bright stretch of story, a wind that smells like songs from 2 streets away, a stillness where nothing moves except the lamp flame telling time. Someone shows the trick of rolling a knucklebone along the fingers without letting it fall. Someone else tries, and the bone prefers the floor. The room develops a gentle applause made entirely of eyes. The hand drum volunteers a heartbeat. The flute leans into a scale that the lamp has always liked. The lyre adds the 2 notes that make people decide to stand or to stay, and tonight everybody chooses staying. Bread returns, thinner and happier. Water returns, cooler and closer. The cup returns, rim damp without being generous. The tiny bell that is not a bell remains obediently unused. Safety is too obvious to be mentioned. Sometimes the room is generous enough to let shyness be the performer. A person who has avoided the platform all evening accepts a place at its edge and tells a story about a road. They walked before they knew which end of a lamp was safest to touch. The story is not large. It is 2 corners and a bridge and a dog that changed its mind. The room likes it. The lyre gives the sound a wall can make when it agrees to hold a picture. Dice pretend not to listen and stop at prettier numbers than before. The doorkeeper writes a mark on the wax tablet that means nothing like story told, because the ledger does not know how to say that. It says lamp extended instead, which is the way this house records gratitude. When the hour grows softer, the rules do not change so much as accept they have done enough. The bowl's rim does not get tapped as often. The flute trails into a slope the ear can walk down without tripping. The hand drum puts itself away and looks like a basket. The platform becomes a rug again. A braid brushes a nape, and both of them decide to call that an event. The mirror remains turned toward the plaster. It is pleased to have work that involves not seeing. The lamp lowers itself again, and the blue at its throat becomes the color that tells moths to try elsewhere. The dice are gathered in the hand like seeds you mean to plant tomorrow. Voices use nouns less and verbs of being more here, now, this, enough. Nobody claps. Everybody thanks the air for practicing being good air. Before the room forgets to be a room and becomes sleep, a last small ritual passes between cup and ledger. The cup settles rim down, which is the polite way to say the mouth is finished working. The stylus makes a dot on the wax, and the dot looks like a star that refused to be larger. A crumb is moved to a plate that has learned to be a beach and not an archive. A ribbon is tugged and proves it knew the answer to the question without having to say it. Someone who has not lost or won anything places a knucklebone on the table and leaves it there as a promise to return. The bone likes being a promise. It has spent its whole life trying to become one. The doorkeeper looks at the curtain and convinces it to be excellent at stillness. The house, having made warmth without noise, allows quiet to become sleep's first messenger. If your eyes close before the last note fades, the room will complete itself in a way your dreams will understand. The bowl will become a small moon. The dice will become planets. The lyre a line on the horizon. The cup a hill. The lamp a star with good manners. If you remain awake, we will walk slowly through the short hall to the quiet room where boundaries are furniture and rest is practiced on purpose. The platform will remember it was a stage and also a rug and be content to be neither for a while. The knucklebone will wait with the discipline of a cat who knows you are coming back. The lamp will keep time without watching. And the night, which knows how to be generous with people who have been generous with it, will make room for the next chapter to arrive like a hand finding another hand, or a sentence that lands on the simplest word it can find and knows it is finished. A quiet room does not advertise itself. It sits a little off the corridor where the floor remembers fewer footsteps, and the plaster has learned to be patient. The lamp here is smaller, trimmed to the sort of flame that knows how to keep company without keeping score. A couch waits at a generous angle to the light, so that the face can turn away from brightness without turning its back on comfort. A low table holds the same grammar every good night speaks water. A short plate of bread with its crumbs already behaving, a pinch bowl of salt, a folded cloth that believes in second chances. The curtain is the troubadour. Its braid shows the middle knot at rest, and the tie has been practiced so many times it can be loosened with 2 fingers and no sound at all. Rules arrive as furniture, not speeches. The mirror leans toward the wall by exactly a thumb's width more than it leaned in any other room. This tells the mirror it may glow but not see. The lamp has been lowered by the width of a bean. This tells the room that edges should soften. The cup sits on the tray with its rim turned slightly sideways. This is the cup's way of saying talk may become listening without needing to be brave about it. Linen lies across the back of the couch like a polite cloud ready to become warmth without asking the skin to petition for it. The cord that could summon help if help were needed lives where helpers' hands can find it, and guests' eyes are not required to notice it. The back door that leads to the lane minds its own business and would be offended if anyone called it an exit. It is a punctuation mark for sentences that end on time. The doorkeeper does not enter so much as visit the threshold and show the room that the house continues to pay attention. They touch the tie, not to change it, but to let the curtain feel remembered. They look at the lamp and let the flame know that its job is smaller now, therefore more important. They settle the water nearer the hand that will want it first. Turn the salt so it can be pinched without reaching, and set the bread so that the larger piece happens to be under the smaller. Then the doorkeeper steps away with that particular absence. Only skilled people can make a space that feels watched over without feeling watched. Two people sit, or one person lies and the other remains near, or the room is occupied by one who wishes only to listen to their own breath until it agrees to listen back. The quiet room knows all these arrangements and keeps none of them for gossip. Linen becomes a collaborator. It remembers a shoulder as if the shoulder were something it once owned and later lent to a friend. It returns that memory in warmth, not in words. A braid, checked earlier, raises the nape in the way that means a day is becoming an evening properly. The ribbon misbehaves by one finger's width, and then behaves again without anybody having to notice. The couch learns the shape of a spine that has decided not to defend itself. Privacy, when it begins, is not a curtain falling, but a temperature changing. The air becomes a degree warmer and a measure slower. Voices tilt inward and decide they prefer being close to the lamp rather than loud in the room. The mirror looks toward the wall and contributes a kind of golden consent. A palm finds a sleeve linen to linen and remains there long enough to be understood. Breath, which had been a solitary craft, becomes a braided thing. Two rhythms exchanging small favors until both decide on a single, kinder pace. Oil remembers it lives in the next room and chooses to continue its work by rumor. Skin understands without needing to shine. Signals continue to speak, and their language is soft. Linen pulled once toward the knee means the room prefers quiet to conversation. Linen smoothed flat again means conversation may return if it can remember to whisper. A hand laid gently on the couch's wooden edge asks, "May we lower the lamp?" And a finger in the air, paused above the flame, answers, "We have already begun." The curtain's tie is asked a question by the smallest tug. The knot loosens half a thought and learns stillness again. The cup's rim turns farther from the mouth, which is a polite way to say the mouth is finished working, at least for a while. None of this is theatrical. The room applauds with temperature and the lamp with steadiness. Boundaries here are a kindness, not offense. The doorkeeper will return precisely as often as safety begs and exactly as seldom as comfort requests. Footsteps in the corridor pass like weather, acknowledged, not invited inside. Should an argument attempt to be born, a pot in the service room remembers how to stumble convincingly and then apologizes for the noise. The argument forgets its name. Should weariness attempt to become collapse, the cool jug advances to the hand without requiring the mouth to ask. Should shyness attempt to leave before it has been met halfway, the house reshapes the room by a lamp width or a cushion turn until shyness realizes it has been understood. It is possible to fall asleep in this room without noticing you have been invited to. The couch understands the difference between rest and resignation. It teaches the back how to inhabit softness without surrendering dignity. The lamp practices the ancient art of counting heartbeats for other people. The mirror keeps glowing at the plaster, and the plaster, which has kept so many nights in confidence, glows back. Fabric speaks to language that words would make clumsy rustle, that means yes, pause that means stay, a sigh that means enough for now. Where particulars would wake the mind, the room chooses outlines and lets specifics fall away like a coat put on its peg and forgotten until morning. If conversation remains awake, it becomes the kind that has no need to win. Memories are given without being weighed. Errors are confessed, and the confession is a kind of folding, not a trial. Hopes are spoken as if they were cups of water held carefully, offered without showing off, returned to the tray before hands grow tired. The mouth learns that silence can be an agreement instead of a disappearance. The ear learns that listening can be work and also a kind of sleep. The body remembers it is not a problem to be solved, but a place to live. Somewhere under the couch, a small draft decides to be useful and cools ankles in the exact measure that makes ankles grateful. Suggestiveness, when it visits, respects the furniture. A shoulder is admired by linen, not by eyes. A ribbon is untied by the hand that tied it and becomes a flourish on the table. Later it returns, as ribbons do, without needing ceremony. A palm learns the curve of a back as if returning a borrowed book. The back accepts, then asks the palm whether it would like to keep reading. A breath carries the flavor of perfume from wrist to throat, and then lays it gently down where it will not be wasted. The lamp chooses to glow and not to watch. The mirror keeps its oath. The ledger sleeping on the table in the other room dreams of dots and curves that mean nothing broke and all was well, and refuses to dream of anything else. Eventually, even closeness needs a pause, and the room knows how to supply it without turning the pause into a wall. Water is there. Bread is there. The salt believes in being generous to small pieces. A sleeve is smoothed where it creased. A braid is lifted and set down again, with the care one gives to a sleeping pet. A ribbon relearns obedience long enough to be thanked. The couch yields and then remembers its shape. The lamp inhales. The curtain takes a breath that belongs to everyone and releases it in a way that belongs to no one. It is impossible to hurry here. The room does not know how and has no interest in learning. Safety keeps its watch kindly. The doorkeeper's ear counts the moments between sounds and finds them trustworthy. The lane behind the house remains a possibility rather than a plan. The wedge that lives under the table leg continues to persuade the floor to be more level than it is. The pot that once clattered is quiet now, as if proud of a job done in an earlier chapter. The bell cord waits like a string on an instrument that has been tuned and does not need to prove it by being plucked. Even the moth that considered the lamp earlier has found more interesting business elsewhere. The room's only predator is time, and time has been domesticated by the lamp's small arithmetic. If sleep arrives while words are still finding their last commas, the room completes the sentences with the correct endings. Linen becomes a tide that knows when to rise and when to leave a beach in peace. The couch becomes a small country in which citizenship requires only breathing. The lamp lowers itself by the width of a bean until the throat of its flame shows blue, the color that tells both moths and minds to try their errands tomorrow. The curtain, now excellent at stillness, holds the night on one side and the room on the other, as if both were dear to it. The doorkeeper writes nothing. This is the most accurate entry for what has just been kept safe. If wakefulness remains, it is the easy kind that doesn't consider itself a failure. Two hands find each other and decide to be warm rather than busy. A foot learns where the edge of the rug begins and decides to stay. A cheek leans against a sleeve with the trust one usually reserves for pillows. The cup returns to the tray rimmed down the quietest way to agree with sleep. The salt is ignored and then forgiven. The bread is saved for later. The mirror continues to glow at the wall. It will remember nothing in the morning and be proud of its ignorance. At last the room practices departure, which is only a form of gentle tiding. The lamp is pinched with a bent nail until the flame becomes a perfect memory. Linen is folded in on itself so that the damp is private and the warmth can be stored for someone else. The cup is rinsed. The plate receives its last geography of crumbs and becomes a beach to be swept. The curtain's knot returns to the height that means the room is resting and would enjoy being left alone. The doorkeeper appears without arriving, notices that nothing requires a name, and lets the ledger remain closed. If coins must move, they do so in the voice coins use when nobody is counting out loud. When you leave the quiet room, you do not truly leave it. It comes with you like a learned posture or a kindness you have decided to keep. The corridor seems shorter because the lamp's arithmetic has rewritten distance. The small stage down the hall remembers being a rug and is happy to continue. The cup and ledger in their parlor look pleased with their earlier work. The entire house has become the sort of place where sleep can safely find you, whether or not you are trying. Should your eyes close before the next room is ready to introduce itself, the quiet room will keep your place. Should you remain awake, we will go on gently into the part of the night where safety checks are performed like lullabies. Red appears again in case dreams are hungry, and laughter soft, and almost entirely breath reminds the dark it is among friends. After midnight, the house changes key, without changing the song. The lamp throats are bluer, the shadows less interested in drama, and every surface has learned a quieter way to breathe. What was conversation becomes a kind of weather that moves through rooms without needing faces. The curtain at the corridor settles into stillness that looks practiced. The doorkeeper's stool sits where it always sits, a thumb's width farther back, the posture of someone who has earned the right to lean. You can feel the hour in the air the way you feel depth in water. Not heavier, just more itself. This is the part of night when kindness becomes infrastructure unseen beams holding up the roof of sleep. The first sweep begins at the lamp that was left bravest. A bent nail finds the wick's spent syllable and pinches it away. The flame sighs and becomes steadier, as if grateful for being given a smaller job done well. The doorkeeper cups a hand, not to protect the light from wind, there is hardly wind, but to show the lamp that someone is paying attention. Oil is poured by the width of a finger for rooms where talk may keep its shape a little longer. In the quiet room, the reservoir is left lower, the blue at the throat becoming a signal to the mind that walking can now be done while lying down. Each saucer is turned so drips cannot surprise the table's honest grain. The mirror in the corridor is leaned one thumb farther toward the wall, so it will glow but not notice. You can measure a house's character by how it trims lamps after midnight. This one is a gentle mathematician. Red follows light. In the small parlor, the tray is reset with the accuracy of an oath. Two halves become quarters. The knife wipes its clean edge along the cloth and remembers not to sing when it glints. The salt is pinched once to loosen, then made into a small hill no hand will have to dig. Water is poured into the cup that knows how to wait, the jug turned with its handle toward whichever hand will need it first. A second cup is set beside the first, rim down, because some people like the idea of company more than company. The house respects this. The plate is moved a hand's breadth nearer the edge of the table, so sleep-drunk fingers can find it without learning new geometry. When the tray is carried to the quiet room, linen folds itself over the bread with the modesty of a cloud. When it arrives, it lays itself aside again like a scarf that has always known when to stop being dramatic. Soft laughter travels better in this hour than any other. It begins as breath, then remembers it has permission to become sound. Dice in the small stage room remember what they used to be and decide they would rather be seeds now. Two of them roll once in their bowl, as if to show they can still be pretty, and then practice being planets at rest. The lyre on its chair has learned to be a piece of furniture. A string is brushed by accident and makes a note like a wink. Someone tells a story so small it might be mistaken for a sigh, a knot that finally agreed to hold, a ribbon that behaved all evening, and then misbehaved the kind way, and the room smiles with its shoulders rather than its mouth. Even when closeness visits, it does so at the volume of the lamp's breath and inside of the hand kind of warmth that refuses to wake anyone not invited. Safety checks are lullabies said to furniture. The doorkeeper's palm finds the couch leg and the wedge beneath it, confirms the floor is still persuaded to be level. The back door to the lane is tried, not to dramatize escape, only to keep privacy in good repair. The latch whispers yes and returns to attending the dark. The bell cord that is not a bell is stroked lightly where it lives hidden. Its fiber answers with the satisfied tension of a string tuned properly. In the service room, the pot that once clattered on purpose is set a finger's width farther from the table's edge because tables forget. The corridor is swept with the eyes rather than the broom. Crumbs are taught to become geography on a plate instead of underfoot. All of this is done in the grammar of touch, not announcement. Even the moth that used to argue with the lamp has gone elsewhere to practice philosophy. Some guests are still speaking, but the nouns have been put away. Verbs remain the ones that require no object. Rest, stay, breathe, be. A palm finds a sleeve, linen to linen, and the two remain acquaintances rather than declarations. Breath chooses the slower path and decides it belongs to both. A braid, checked earlier, raises the nape 3 times in the same way and is pleased with itself. The curtain at the middle knot lets the air pass but refuses to pass news. Where words would make the room brighter than needful. Fabric takes over rustle, meaning yes, pause, meaning stay, the smallest laugh, meaning we have reached the correct paragraph. The ledger on the table, if asked for a record, would write nothing and call it exact. There is a kindness reserved for after midnight that sounds like water poured correctly. In the quiet room, the doorkeeper does not ask, "Thirsty?" The water is simply set within reach, and the handle turned toward the familiar hand. Bread reveals its quarter as if it had thought of the idea itself. Salt waits to be pinched by fingers that have finally forgiven the day. A shawl lifts and returns to shoulders in a movement that belongs to muscle memory rather than instruction. The person who places these things knows how to leave a room without making the absence into a spectacle. The person who receives them knows how to accept them without making gratitude into conversation. The house has achieved its preferred diplomacy, needs met before they become requests. Counting happens, but softly. In the parlor, the coin dish is rotated, so house and guest both see the same little republics. 2 bronzes move to join their tidy column, with a sound impossible to write down less than a clink, more than a breath. The wax tablet opens to its dust-colored face, and the stylus records the kind of marks that forgive. A vertical stroke for a lamp extended, a dot for water offered, a small curve that means a curtain returned from low to middle without incident. No names. No histories. Only the arithmetic that lets morning believe the night was honest. The seal turns its lion face up and admires the ceiling. Even numbers sleep eventually. The tablet will become a pond again, smooth and willing to be written on, when dawn decides to argue. Sometimes a room needs to remember. It isn't a witness. The mirror is leaned farther toward the wall, the way a friend turns away so a friend can be beautiful without being watched. The lamp lowers by the width of a bean and becomes a clock that refuses to hurry. Linen becomes air when a cheek needs a place to practice trust. A ribbon misbehaves by exactly 1 finger's width and is forgiven before anyone can take attendance. A shoulder is admired by fabric, not by eyes. Where particulars might wake desire into something that doesn't belong to this hour, outlines do the work better. The house is an expert in outlines. Suggestiveness is invited to sit in a quiet chair and be useful rather than loud. The second sweep is for endings that deserve courtesy. In the small stage room, the hand drum lies down in the shadow of a stool. The flute is covered by a cloth that smells faintly of cedar. The bowl that held dice is turned so the rim doesn't dream of rolling. In the dressing room, pins are returned in pairs to their tray, because pairs calm trays. The comb sleeps teeth inward. The perfume bottle is turned a finger's width so the glass will catch less light and brag less in the morning. In the washing room, the brazier is covered until the coals remember tomorrow. The ewer bows to the basin and is forgiven for the drop it cannot help. Every apology is accepted in advance. Every object is thanked without being bored by praise. There is always one last small comedy after midnight, and it belongs to soft laughter. A towel refuses to stay on its hook like a well-meaning actor missing a cue, and the doorkeeper coaxes it into obedience with a fold that would be a joke if linen could laugh. A cushion remembers a guest's favorite corner and presents it to an empty room. The pot in the service space tries to remember how to clatter and can't, which is the punchline. Someone pats it anyway for diligence. A knucklebone found in a hemline is placed on the low table like a returning traveler. It will be tomorrow's first story, and nobody will pretend it is larger than it is. This is the hour when even mishaps refuse to grow teeth. When the house is satisfied that everything is either sleeping or practicing, it lets silence become an art rather than an accident. The corridor's long breath evens out. The back lane becomes only the idea of a lane. The doorkeeper's spine settles and agrees to be a spine. The lamp that began the night bravest draws its circle a degree smaller. Moths are dismissed from their duties. If eyes close now, the house knows how to complete the page. If eyes remain open, there is nothing left to prove. The ledger is balanced, the cups have learned their manners, the curtain has become excellent at stillness. After midnight is not an ending. It is the seam between a night done properly and a morning that will not have to repair it. And if sleep comes while a hand still rests on a sleeve or a cheek leans against linen, the house will keep time without watching. Bread will be kind to hunger if hunger wakes alone. Water will forgive a clumsy reach. The seal will keep its lion face up so the room can borrow its courage without needing the noise that often comes with courage. The curtain will hold the night on one side and the peace on the other, and not become bored with loyalty. When we wake the morning, it will be by folding and counting and opening, not by searching for what was misplaced. For now, the hour belongs to small lights doing honest work, and to soft laughter that knows when to stop. We have arrived at the middle of the night. The house approves. There is a corner of the house that does not hurry, not at noon, not at midnight. It is a shallow niche painted the color of kept vows, with a little shelf that holds what people remember to be grateful for when they are not being clever. Two slender figures, household gods, cheerful and alert, stand as if they were dancing only a moment ago and agreed to pause for the sake of dignity. Below them, along the base, two painted serpents glide toward a round altar, their bodies patient loops, their faces wise in the way patterns are wise. A lamp lives here that is never the bravest and never the last. It burns at the kind of height that reminds breath to be even. This is the lararium, the house's small, bright conscience. When the rooms grow quiet and the ledger closes its eyes, this is where the night comes to say thank you for not making a spectacle of itself. The approach is housekeeping disguised as devotion. The doorkeeper brings things that have already done honest work. A heel of bread that held its shape through several conversations. A drop of wine rescued from a polite cup that knew how to stop. A pinch of salt that will not miss being missed. A sprig of something green that has survived in a jar all evening and has not argued. The bread is set down with the side that remembered hands turned slightly upward, as if it were still listening. The wine is touched to the lip of the tiny altar, and then let go in a ring that will dry in quiet. The stain is a promise, not a mess. Salt is scattered with the accuracy of someone who has watched storms become harmless by being named. The sprig rests where a serpent's painted tongue could taste it if paint were allowed such pleasures. These are not rich offerings, and therefore they are perfect. The gods of a house prefer to be thanked in the currency of the day that was actually lived. Incense is coaxed rather than lit, a coal from the brazier no longer proud. Only useful comes in a spoon of clay and settles on the little dish as if it had always belonged to altars and never to kettles. Resin is offered in a measure that would be a pinch if the hour were louder. Tonight it is half a pinch, and the smoke learns to rise in a way that resembles permission. The first ribbon of scent goes to the ceiling and rests there. The second discovers the painted serpents and decides to learn their curves. The third travels into the corridor, finds the quiet room, approves the lamp at its small blue throat, and returns, satisfied that the house is keeping itself properly. Smoke like this has a talent for remembering which rooms spoke kindly and which learned to be kind by practice. It forgives both. The prayer here is not a list, and it is not a bargain. It sounds like inventory spoken at the volume of gratitude. The doorkeeper names what behaved itself, the curtain that learned stillness and taught it to others, the lamp that became clock and never scolded, the coin that moved without announcing its virtue, the towel that dried what needed drying and then forgot, the cup that understood when mouths should rest, the hands that worked without hurry and the mouths that allowed them to. Then the doorkeeper names what needed correcting and was corrected without shame, the chair that wanted to wobble and changed its mind, the pot that remembered clatter and then remembered it belonged to a kitchen and not to a playhouse, the knucklebone that hid in a hem and returned to being a toy instead of a secret. Last is the request that is hardly a request. Let this house continue to be equal to the people in it. Airing the rooms is part of this worship. Curtains that have practiced stillness all night are persuaded to teach the air a gentler way to move. A hand lifts and lowers not to reveal, only to trade what is stale for what is careful. The middle knot returns to its resting loop and remembers the country of the cord. The mirror near the altar is turned a finger's width toward the wall, so that it can glow without becoming a witness to prayer. Mirrors, when permitted, will try to own feelings that do not belong to them. In the washing room, a basin is carried to the door, allowed to see the corridor, and convinced to believe in tomorrow. The ewer bows to the basin and is thanked for its posture. The brazier gives one soft red breath and accepts a cover. Coals enjoy being told they have done enough. Linen is folded as if it were language. The cloth from the quiet room returns to square by remembering each corner in turn. Inside first, so damp can be private. Outside last, so warmth can be public. The stack learns the weight of a new top sheet and settles without complaint. A shawl that kept company becomes shoulderless again and is draped across the chest like a sentence that will be finished in the morning. On the dressing tray, pins gather in pairs because pairs comb trays. The comb sleeps with its teeth inward, which is the approved way for polite tools to rest. The perfume bottle is turned so its glass will brag less when dawn decides to accuse it of vanity. Even the ribbon, which misbehaved by exactly one finger's width, is looped into the kind of knot that flatters memory rather than pride. The small arithmetic of order proceeds without pointing to itself. In the parlor, the cup sits rimmed down, the quietest word for done, and the second cup, which kept company by existing, does not feel cheated. Bread on the tray is squared so its corners do not snag anyone's patience on the way to sleep. Salt is fluffed with the side of the knife. Even granules like to feel considered at an hour like this. A crumbscape on a plate is persuaded into a tidy beach and promised rescue by broom rather than shoe. The coin dish is rotated without being claimed, and two bronzes that meant to be shy take courage from their column and step into it. The wax tablet opens one eye to receive a final mark, a straight stroke that means a lamp lasted a dot for water offered at the correct minute, a curve that says a curtain returned from low to middle, without any complaint worth writing. No names, no accounting of souls, just the arithmetic that lets morning be brave. Even closeness has its epilogue here, and it too belongs to the shrine. A hand that had rested on a sleeve remembers to be a hand again, and withdraws without injury. Linen lets go of a shoulder, keeping only the memory that warmth can be loaned and returned. A braid is lifted from the nape and admired, not because it is beautiful, but because it kept its oath. Breath that had braided itself with another breath untwines like ropes on a ship that has decided to stay in harbor, each line still neighborly, none of them necessary for safety now. If a laugh remains, it is the smallest one, the friendliest, the kind that knows it should close its eyes while smiling. The lamp near the niche sees all this as a change in temperature, and raises itself by the width of a beam, so no one will feel scolded by darkness. The house makes a last round for promises. The back door to the lane is tried for the truth it has told all night. The latch reports yes with the pride of an honest hinge. The bell cord is felt where it lives hidden. It answers with the good tension of something tuned, but not plucked. The wedge under the table leg is checked by the knee of habit and found excellent. Floors appreciate coaching. The small stage is restored to rughood, instruments covered like good gossip. Dice return to their bowl and pretend to be seeds again. The bowl sits where morning will find it and decide whether to plant. The pot that once clattered is praised with a touch for keeping its temper in reserve. The kitchen knows it was the hero and does not demand a song. The altar receives what people rarely remember to give. Apologies too small for ledgers and gratitude too quiet for toasts. A finger to the lip means may our secrets remain well behaved and ours. A palm to the chest means may those who slept do so without cost. A touch to the little shelf means may work tomorrow, not undo the kindness we did tonight. The painted serpents look pleased. They are experts in patience, and have seen more nights than this one managed, more mornings too. The household gods lean into their posture, as if each offering had been the exact coin they had always preferred, a coin made of attention and not of metal. Now the house exhales. The altar lamp is trimmed with the familiar bent nail. The wick gives up its charred syllable, and is shorter for the sake of perfection. A last scent of resin writes a low line above the niche and thins into agreement with sleep. Curtains find their resting height. Mirrors remember to be furniture. Linen learns the shape of a stack that forgives. The ledger sleeps so completely that wax becomes pond again. Even the coin dish, which never truly sleeps, closes one imaginary eye and dreams of columns tidy as reeds at a river. The corridor is a river now, very slow, moving toward a dawn that has not been invited yet and will not be hurried even by the thought of it. If your eyes close while the smoke is still learning the serpent's painted curves, the lararium will finish the chapter on your behalf. It knows how to fold the rest of the offerings into the story without waking you to approve the prose. If you remain awake, you will feel the house practicing the morning in small rehearsals. A towel adjusted so it will hang like a sentence ready to be written. A cup placed where the first thirst will not have to search. A lamp lowered until blue becomes the color of courage and not of alertness. Either way, the chapter becomes a promise the house makes to itself, that when dawn knocks, it will find a room whose last act of night was gratitude rather than fatigue. We are almost at the edge where night hands the street back to the sun. One more chapter remains, and it belongs to departures, the counting that does not sting, the folding that does not erase, the closing of eyes that have done their work. The altar is satisfied, the serpents are content. The little gods, having danced more than anyone noticed, resume their cheerful stance. When we return, it will be to meet morning, not as something that takes, but as something given a house that kept its promises. Morning begins before light is visible. It starts as a temperature, as a politeness in the air. The lamp throats are more blue than gold. Shadows forget to be dramatic. The house takes a long, even breath and holds it not to keep anyone from waking, but to keep the night from spilling while it is poured into day. The curtain at the corridor loosens the idea of stillness and experiments with the idea of quiet movement. The doorkeeper lifts their spine a thumb's width and lets the body remember that it has a back. The first work is always the last kindness. Water set within reach without waking a mouth to ask. A quarter of bread revealed as if the loaf had thought of it. The shawl that learned someone's shoulders returning to the chair that never minds being second. A palm smooths linen not to erase anything, but to tell the cloth it has been believed. The couch remembers how to be furniture after moonlighting as a country. The mirror remains turned toward the wall for 1 minute longer than necessary, then forgives itself and returns to its ordinary job of glowing. Counting arrives like weather spoken softly. Coins are rotated, not pulled. Copper, comfortable with its usefulness, finds its kin in neat little families. Bronze stands up straighter. It likes columns. Silver, when present, lies still and agrees to be counted last. The dish is shallow, so no coin can hide behind a braver one. The doorkeeper does not tip it toward themselves. They tilt it toward the person who supplied the clink of trust in the first place. The sound is less than a clink and more than a breath. It is the sound accounting makes when it has nothing to prove. The wax tablet wakes without complaint. The stylus, bright at one end and soft at the other, writes the arithmetic that morning deserves, a vertical stroke for lamp keeping, a dot for water given at the correct minute, a curve that means a curtain return from low to middle without incident, a small, almost crescent for bread renewed, a tidy hook for a door tried and found honest. When the last mark is finished, the flat end smooths what would like to be forgotten. Wax becomes pond again, untroubled and ready to reflect whatever is needed next. Linen goes back to square by remembering each corner in turn. Inside first, to keep damp private. Outside last, to let warmth remain public. The stack learns the weight of a new top and settles. The towel that refused its hook in the night is persuaded to accept a compromise fold and behaves as if it had invented obedience. Ribbons return to their tray and loops that flatter memory rather than pride. Pins find their pairs, because pairs comb trays. The comb sleeps with its teeth turned inward, which is how polite tools rest. Rooms are aired as if they were books being fanned between pages. Curtains lift and lower not to show anything, only to trade used air for patient air. The middle knot is tied with the small satisfaction of muscle memory. The cord remembers where it likes to live. The lamp in the quiet room lowers by the width of a bean, then by the width of thought. Blue at the throat means bravery without noise. In the dressing space, the perfume bottle is turned a finger's width, so it will brag less when dawn accuses glass of vanity. The mirror, now permitted to face the room, keeps its glow and forgets to keep secrets. It is forgiven. Safety completes its last round like a lullaby that knows how to end. The back latch to the lane is tried and says yes in the voice of an honest hinge. The bell cord that is not a bell is touched where it lives hidden. Its fiber answers with the good tension of something tuned, not plucked. The wedge under the table leg is nudged and proves the floor can be persuaded to be level even when the world is not. The small stage is restored to rughood. The flute sleeps beneath a cedar-smelling cloth. The drum lies on its side and dreams of being a basket. Dice return to their bowl and pretend to be seeds again. Nothing in the house wishes to be a witness. Everything wishes to be available. People are helped into mourning the way one helps a boat push off, without making a speech about it. Water for the mouth that has worked, a bite for the hunger that woke second, a quiet gesture towards sandals that have remembered their straps. Braids are checked and approved with the back of a hand. A ribbon that misbehaved by a finger's width is forgiven as thoroughly as if the ribbon had been a person. If a laugh remains, it is the smallest kind, the kind that closes its own eyes while it smiles. The curtain practices letting a body pass without announcing the event. Departure here is not a break, it is a change of posture. A cup returns to the tray rimmed down, the quietest word for done. A palm rests briefly on the doorpost and leaves an invisible print the wood will keep without telling stories about. A coin that chose to be shy in the evening chooses to be brave in the morning and joins its column. A thank you is spoken in the grammar of movement slowly, with shoulders unarmed. The house accepts it without requiring more. The ledger writes nothing for this. Nothing is exactly the right mark. Outside the curtain, the corridor has learned the day's color, though the day has not yet arrived to wear it. The doorkeeper's stool tilts a thumb's width toward the street. It will soon have to translate again. The lamp that began the night bravest draws its circle smaller and smaller until it is only the memory of a circle, then agrees to become a wick with soot on its lips. The bent nail, faithful and unromantic, pinches the last syllable away. Smoke writes the smallest word on the air and erases itself at the same time. The lararium is visited one more time, because gratitude prefers symmetry. Bread's last heel is touched to the little altar and left as a rumor of plenty. Salt is pinched to wake patience. The small lamp that kept company all night is lowered but not extinguished. Houses like to keep one promise burning where gratitude can find it. The painted serpents look pleased, not because they were fed, but because the house remembered to speak softly while it fed them. The household gods take on their cheerful stance again, which looks a great deal like a dance paused politely. Now the rooms finish their sentences. The basin is emptied with the care one gives to a friend who needs to go before you do. The ewer bows and is allowed to rest. The couch is brushed with a palm that understands the difference between tiding and scolding. Crumbs are persuaded into a tidy beach on a plate that believes in brooms. The mirror, properly awake, promises to reflect only what is necessary. The curtain returns to its day height and admits that it enjoys gossip in moderation. The house, which has kept secrets without owning them, lets them become sleep in other bodies, in other rooms, far from here. If you are still here when the first thin light lifts the edges of things, you will see the threshold practice its day voice polite, clear, less padded, but not less kind. You will hear a single wheel choosing the careful path outside and declining to rattle. You will smell nothing in particular, which is what clean morning smells like in houses that were respectful of night. You may feel the small, truthful emptiness that follows good work completed. It does not ask to be filled. It asks to be carried. When we leave, we do so the way we entered, by promising the curtain nothing it cannot keep. A palm on wood, a breath through the nose, a step that lets the street remember our weight without being burdened by it. Behind us, the house resumes the steady task of existing, sweeping dawn into corners where it will not glare, teaching the first cup of the day to be water before it is anything else, lowering its lamps into memory. Ahead of us, the street remembers how to be a street. Between them we have slept or nearly slept or learned how to, which is the same thing when done correctly. The ledger closes. Wax becomes pond. Coins become citizens again. Pins find their pairs. Ribbons learn patience. The bent nail rests in the lamp base like a small, faithful tool that would rather be useful than praised. The house is ready to be day. The night has been kept with care. That is all the miracle anyone has a right to expect. You have reached morning. The lamps are out. The curtain holds still. The ledger sleeps. If you are already asleep, the house will keep time without watching. If you are still awake, let your breath take the job. The lamp is finished. Slow in, slower out. Shoulders soften. Jaw unhooks. Hands become hands again, with nothing to carry. Thank you for drifting through a quiet night in Pompeii. For the rest of this video, the screen will stay black, so your room can keep its own darkness and your battery can rest. If you wake later, the house will still be gentle in your memory coins and their families. Linen in its stack, a small blue flame becoming morning. Close your eyes. Let the curtain breathe once and be still. Good night.